everybody, my name is Michael Thompson and I am an East Lee County Republican.
I am Jim Leavens and I am running for Lee County Sheriff, and I am an East Lee County Republican.
One of the things that we wanted to do was to offer our members a way to get to know the candidates. It's tough to be able to go out and get your kids and your husband or your wife or your job, whatever it may be, that holds you back from actually getting to know these candidates. It's tough to visit them online at their website just to, get their campaign talking points. But wouldn't it be cool if you were actually able to sit down one-on-one with them and ask them real life questions instead of being spoon-fed what they want you to hear? Well, that's what we've done. I recently sat down with Lee County Sheriff candidate Jim Leavens and got to know him a little bit. Jim's a great guy. I learned a lot talking with him, I really did. Now, we don't endorse any candidate. We won't do that. That's not what we're here for. We're here to provide a platform for the candidates and you guys to get to know each other. And then you guys can, decide which candidate is for you and which one, may not be for you. So I recently sat down with Jim and wanted to learn a little bit more about him and ask him if he wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about his career with us. And here's what he had to say.
I started in April of 1988, started in corrections, and did corrections for almost 3 years, a little short of 3 years. Then I went to road patrol, and in road patrol I worked West District at first and a little bit in East District. West District's Fort Myers Beach, then East District is Lehigh and MLK. And I only worked the road for about 2 years and made detective rather quickly. And after being detective for only 8 months, they put me in narcotics. And I worked narcotics, and I went back to being property detective. Then I went downtown for a robbery detective, worked grand theft autos, and then shortly, less than a year after that, they moved me into homicide. I worked homicide, violent crimes for a while. And that's where I made sergeant. And I worked as sergeant in homicide for about another year. Then I went out to the road East District as a sergeant for 2 years. And then they asked me to go back to homicide as a sergeant, so I did that. And I worked that for another couple of years, and then I was promoted to lieutenant and put in internal affairs. So I was asked to go to Lehigh as a captain, and I did that for only about a year. And then I was asked by Sheriff Scott if I'd go to homicide. He had some issues with homicide. So I transferred back down to homicide as the captain and worked that for about a year or so. And then I moved up to watch commander. Then eventually I worked investigations in the jail, in charge of investigations in the jail. Was in charge of the juvenile assessment center in the jail downtown for a while. And then I ended up going to watch commander, where I finished up my career. And finished, when I retired from the patrol division, I retired with the rank of major. In my 30 years in the agency, I acquired over 4,000 hours of specialized training. Those are specialized classes I went to: hostage negotiation, organized crime, narcotics investigation, death investigation, advanced death investigation.
So with 30 years of experience, I asked Jim, what was it like, to work in internal affairs? I've always heard that, cops hate other cops, that work in internal affairs. And I was curious on, his experiences, and here's what he had to say.
One of the best compliments you can get working in internal affairs is somebody on the other side of the desk would say, it's bad enough I have to be in here to deal with a situation like this, but I'm glad you're on that side of the table, because I'm known for being very fair. I was excited in internal affairs. After a year, I actually got promoted to captain. The day Mike Scott got sworn in as sheriff, that night, the actual night, the governor swore him in, he made me a captain in internal affairs. And I was in there for another 6 years.
With such an impressive career in law enforcement and being recently retired, I asked Jim what motivated him to run for sheriff and if he's been able to pick up any endorsements.
And what I was able to do in my career was, actually, I didn't just sit in one area. I didn't just sit in patrol or work patrol my whole. I worked a little bit in every area, which gave me, I didn't realize it, but I was preparing to be sheriff all those years. And as I got close to the end of my retirement, a lot of people from the agency were asking me, would you run for sheriff? And I wasn't thinking about it because Mike Scott was the sheriff, and Mike Scott was a machine. No one could beat Mike Scott. And so I didn't think much about it. So when I retired, Mike Scott was still in place, and then a year after I left, Mike Scott retired. And then I actually sat down with Mike and told him my intentions, and he said it'd be a good idea for me to run. So he encouraged me to run, so I did. there is a burning passion inside of me. I love law enforcement. I love talking about it. Never had 2 bad days in a row, as I've said. Endorsements. I've got excellent endorsements. I've been endorsed by Sheriff McDougal. I've been endorsed by Sheriff Shope. I've been endorsed by Chief Brightman. I've been endorsed by Colonel Taylor, Major Case, Major Griner. I know I'm going to forget a couple. Bubba Green, Colonel Waite. The endorsements plus Lieutenant Marrero from the fire department. The endorsements are phenomenal.
So I asked Jim if he was elected by the voters of Lee County, what is the sheriff office? What is it going to look like on day one under Sheriff Leavens?
Day one is we need to adjust the manpower. Right now we're too heavy, and this happens through attrition. You put friends in positions, you put relatives in position, you put political favor people in position. It ends up being the nature of the beast in the sheriff's office. I've seen it through 4 sheriffs. And so each sheriff that comes in new has to deal with that. So no, I'm not gonna go in with a wrecking hand and fire people. That's just not gonna happen. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna arrange people. A perfect example, our predator unit. We have a predator unit in Lee County that deals with sexual predators and sexual offenders. And our policy in the sheriff's office is a detective has to put eyes on these individuals once every 30 days. Not call a neighbor, call a boss and make sure they're okay. Literally put eyes on him. Our temporary sheriff, Carmen Marcino, the appointed sheriff, has lowered that unit down to 2 people. It's impossible for 2 people to check on 953 people once every 30 days. So just because you're in a higher ranking position doesn't mean you can't be assigned to that unit. You can't be out helping people doing that. So that's one thing. We need to make arrangements. Our narcotics division, I'm being told, is down to either 3 people or 6 people, including supervisors. I work narcotics. You cannot do an operation safely with that many people. Just you need to realign the manpower and eliminate some positions. Some positions can be eliminated. You're very top heavy. If you look at the way the command structure is, now you have captains, commanders, majors, colonels, chief, undersheriff, and sheriff. So when they sit in a room and have a discussion on what should they do, I can almost see it. So what do you think? 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 And it's not necessary. Yeah. And it's necessary if the person in charge doesn't have the amount of experience you need to make those calls. I'm not saying you're going to make those calls without input. You need input from other people because people have different views. But if you have the knowledge and experience, have walked the walk, you can make the decisions a lot easier. And then more importantly, if someone's doing something, you can tell if they're doing it right because you've done it.
Florida Senate Bill 7026 in 2018, also known as the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act, gave local school boards the authority to allow teachers in classrooms with firearms, with extensive training done by the local sheriff. So I asked Jim, how is Lee County Sheriff's Office well equipped for that, and are they prepared if an event ever happened? And here's what he had to say.
That's something that needs to be further discussed. I like the fact that they said no. The main reason is that's how I'm leaning. The Guardian Act is what you're talking about. Is what's the likelihood of a teacher having to use that weapon in her career? Like they say a police officer might go 20 years without drawing his weapon. That's false because you take it out quite often, as a matter of fact, just to protect yourself, just to be ready. But in a school, they're more likely to be involved once a week, every other week, breaking up a fight. So now you've got a teacher running into a crowd of kids trying to break up a fight, introducing a gun to a fight. That scares me. Police officers are trained their entire career how to protect that weapon, how to keep the weapon away from people, how to retain the weapon. Teachers are not. So when they walk into a situation, the gun's there. And our weapons have triple retention. What kind of holsters are they going to have? It just really scares me, the fact that they would let them. And then take, for instance, if somebody with a gun comes in and starts running across the room, are they just going to pop, 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 pop? And now they just shot 6 kids. Yeah. That really scares me. Yeah. I like the idea of metal detectors. If you only have 1 or 2 ways, I know it's tough. It's going to be lines to get in, but It happens. We deal with lines. You go to the airport, you have to deal with a line to get through safe. So let's have our kids be safe getting through. When a sheriff's deputy retires, okay, when I retired, you're looking for something to do. So you might not want to go back. I know the governor said that after 6 months retirement, you were able to go back as an SRO. We never came out and offered a part-time position. When I retired from the sheriff's, I wouldn't mind working 1 or 2 days a week at a school. So if you get 2 retirees, you get 2 days a week out of them, you got a full-time officer. Now here's something to remember. You talk about $40,000. You don't have to pay these individuals top dollar. They're already on a retirement. You don't have to give them health insurance. They already got it. You know, you don't have to give them a car. Just leave a car at the school. So there's ways to think outside the box. There's ways to handle that. When I get in there is I'm going to have the school resource officers train every other month with SWAT. So that when a situation kicks off, right now each school has 2 people, usually around 2 SROs. And usually where there's a high school or middle school, there's an elementary school, there's usually within a mile of that area 2 or 3 deputies, because those are other SROs. So if a situation kicks off, you can have 2 or 3 deputies or more at that situation within a minute or 2. And if these individuals train every other month with SWAT, they get there and they don't have to look through a window like happened over on the East Coast. Do we wait for a sergeant? Do we wait for an incident command center? What do? They're trained. They know what to do. They get in, they eliminate the threat, and they deal with any victims. They'll all have gunshot first aid kits. So if there are any gunshot wounds, they'll deal with them, get them out, get them to the hospital, to the ambulance to the hospital to save our kids.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I asked Jim if he was given orders by, let's say, a President quid pro Joe Biden, that it's time for Americans to turn in their guns. And he got that order from above. What is he going to do as the highest constitutional elected official in Lee County? What would he do?
Well, if Biden made president, we got worse problems than worrying about our guns. We seriously do.
No doubt.
It needs to be Trump. Sorry. And that might hurt me, but it needs to be Trump. As the Second Amendment is the Constitution, okay, and I am not coming for your guns as sheriff. I will not come for your guns. Now, unfortunately, the temporary sheriff was asked in an Estero meeting, if someone passed a law to come get your guns, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to enforce the law. And wrong answer. I'm sorry. And that's just not knowing. That's just not having experience, not having the knowledge you need. That as a sheriff, you are the highest constitutional officer of the land. Listen to the verbiage. Constitutional officer. You enforce the Constitution. And that's what's first.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for watching this interview I did with Jim Leavens. He's a really good guy. I highly encourage you to reach out to him and get to know him a little bit, understand, a little bit more about where his positions are when it comes to law enforcement and Lee County moving forward. If you're looking to get in contact with Jim, this is how you can.
Best way to get in contact with me is leavensforlee.com. It's my website. On there is a volunteer page. There's a petition page to do petitions. If you have a question, send it to me. I'll be happy to answer it. If you want to have coffee with a cop, what we do is we set up a location somewhere, your house, a friend's house, or Thursday, Friday night, or Saturday afternoon. Just have some coffee and cake, and I come and I speak to the people who I am and what I do. They usually have 5 or 10 people there, and then usually one of those 5 or 10 will have one and have one and have one, so it's been snowballing. I am Jim Leavens, and I am running for Lee County Sheriff, and I am an East Lee County Republican.